Welcome to Kitsap's Editorial Board. We have the candidates here for, this is the City Council, Bremerton City Council District 6, Roy Runyon, the incumbent councilman, and Richard Huddy, the challenger. Now this is a primary race, and we have a third candidate who couldn't make it to this meeting. What I'd like you guys to do is to start, I'm going to give you each a minute, and for the first question, all I want you to do is tell us a little bit about yourself. Take a minute just to say, here's who I am, and then the second question will give you each an opportunity to say, here's why I'm running. So those will be the first two kind of opening. Let us get to know a little bit about who you are, what you've done, and then why you do it. Tell us just a bit about who you are.
Thank you, Dave. Yes, I'm Roy Runyon. I'm the incumbent city council member. Been on the city council for 6 years and was living in a different district, District 4, which is covered the downtown. We went through a redistricting, a reduction in the size of the council, so now we have 7 council members as opposed to 9 council members. We also redrew the boundary lines. And I also had to resign because I actually found a house. We moved out of the district, and the code, or I'm sorry, the charter here in Bremerton requires district council members to live in the district they represent. So I had to resign 1 year into a 2-year term, and I ran for office in District 6, the new district with the new district boundaries, and defeated the incumbent in District 6. And the reason I'm running again is because we've got a lot to do. We have a continuous challenge with ensuring the city is financially sustainable. We're now starting to make progress as far as creating methods and tools and programs for achieving financial sustainability. So
I'm going to stop you because we're going to come back to that question.
Sure.
Now we know who you are, we'll come back and ask you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. My name is Richard Huddy. My wife Sabrina and I have lived in District 6 since 1999, 16 years. We believe in strong neighborhoods. We founded the Bremerton Rainier District and our Neighborhood Watch program to connect neighbors and increase safety. It works. It's been working very well. I actively serve on the Bremerton Parks and Recreation Commission, and I'm also an active member of the Bremerton Central Lions Club. I have a master's degree in health administration with 26 years of CEO experience in healthcare, management, finance, and development. My philosophy is to provide excellent services at a reasonable cost and compensate all employees fairly, not just the guys at the top. At Capri Heart and Lung Institute, which is the last place I worked and the place from which I retired, we helped thousands of people throughout the county to achieve better health. I'm very proud of that.
Let's launch right into the next question then. That was your background and your career. You've been in commissions and things. Why did you decide to run for this office?
I first became interested in this because I was encouraged by people on both sides of the aisle, Republicans and Democrats, to run for the city council. There are a lot of people who know that I love living in Bremerton, that I'm very bullish on the future of this city, and I'm a big booster of Bremerton. My wife and I are very involved in a great many ways. And they just thought I would be a natural fit for the city council. As I looked at that, I saw ways that I thought I could make a contribution, and I really became convinced that I could help on a leadership basis to help our city achieve the tremendous potential that I think is before us.
And I should just make it clear, you said both sides of the aisle, but this is a non-partisan race.
Well, why I decided to run for office again is because we have a lot to do. Our economic development program is just starting to take off. We're starting to see some results after a huge investment of taxpayer dollars in the downtown area. But we've got a long way to go. Financial sustainability is a huge challenge. We've made major progress. We've gotten the unions to get on board with us, to agree to change our health insurance program, which I advocated a change of for years before the Affordable Care Act was passed by the Congress. So we're becoming more financially sustainable, but we need to grow our revenues through private economic development, preferably. We need to create living wage jobs because a lot of the poor folks who live in the city, including District 6, have a lack of opportunities. And the key to affordable housing in the city, which a lot of people have spoken about, is having folks who have living wage jobs who can afford to live in high quality, high value apartments and also buy homes. The other keys to having affordable housing include access to credit, a reasonable regulatory environment where you don't stifle development. You have adequate supply of housing, and so those are all constant challenges. So we've got a lot to do. I also want to help preserve citizens' access to information and make sure our government is open, accountable, and effective. And we've had major challenges, and I have been a champion for that through my 6 years on the council, and I will continue to do so.
One more open-ended question then. You both have mentioned kind of some broad stuff. What do you think the most pressing issue is for your district specifically? What's the first thing that you kind of take on in District 6 right now as the new year begins, if you're in that seat?
Living wage jobs. You know, the District 6 is not an island unto itself. It's connected intimately with the city. We have a lot of low-income folks in our district. We have a lot of properties that are subpar, that have code enforcement issues, and part of the solution, not the total solution, part of that solution is to enhance our economy so folks living in our district have living wage jobs and can improve their situations. In addition, we need to do code enforcement better, more effectively. I've supported the chronic nuisance properties ordinance. I've supported landlord licensing and registration as concrete steps to improving our housing stock.
Let me follow up on the living wage jobs. What is it in maybe your professional background, your personal background that tells me you are a person who can help make that happen?
Sure. Well, I have a wide background. I've been in the military, I've been in private industry, I've had businesses of my own, been on the council for 6 years, been on the Kitsap Public Facilities District Board of Directors, where one of our main points of focus is economic development. Serve the city as a representative to the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance. So I understand the connection between living wage jobs, the health of your economy, the ability to generate revenue to sustain government services. And I've been working consistently the last 6 years to achieve that. Put forward many proposals, some of which were adopted, some that weren't. So I do have the background and knowledge to actually help us achieve that.
What's a proposal that you think has kind of directly pointed towards jobs in that proposal in that district?
One of the things that happened was, and this might have been 12 or 15 years ago, there was a proposal to bring a NASCAR track to Kitsap County. I wasn't on the council then. The proposal was not taken up by the county or the state. The city of Bremerton decided to get involved, and they did an analysis of the financial requirements that the city of Bremerton ratepayers and taxpayers would have to put forward. And I looked at that very carefully, and it raised questions with me. But as a result of all that, and the fact that the county and the state didn't support that proposal, the funding for the Kitsap Economic Development Alliance was dropped essentially by the city. I think it was $15,000, went down to $2,000. You know, the first year I was in office, I convinced the council to reinstate that funding for KEDA to help us with strategic economic development, not only in the city of Bremerton but countywide. So I was instrumental in doing that. And as a matter of fact, I'm looking forward to seeing the report today from Mr. Powers, the executive director, and I'm starting to question the results we're getting from KEDA. You know, we've chosen to send $15,000 to that organization on a yearly basis, and I expect to see some results. And that's another part of my candidacy and the way I've operated as a council member. When the taxpayers invest money, when we invest money on behalf of the taxpayers to achieve a certain objective, I want to see that that objective is met, or that we're making adjustments to actually achieve those goals and objectives. So again, that's part of holding government accountable and ensuring we have responsible use of our tax dollars.
Richard, priority in District 6, you're there. What do you put at the top of your list?
Well, setting aside the new intersection of Marine Drive and Kitsap Way, which has caused some traffic congestion and difficulties for the residents coming off of Marine Drive. I believe that the biggest thing that we'd be looking at is the promotion of safe, strong and attractive neighborhoods. It's something that I've been working on for years and continue to work on. We'll think that it will really improve the quality of life for certain sections of District 6 that do not have those kind of organized neighborhoods. I just got off the phone with our Community Resources Officer, Joe Sexton, this morning, and we were talking about the status of neighborhood watch captains throughout the district. and I could see where there are certain areas of strength and certain areas of weakness, and certain areas where there is absolutely no crime prevention activity going on. There's no organized community support, there's no neighbors connected to neighbors, no education, no communication amongst neighbors. So these represent areas of weakness in the district that I would like to shore up. To me, quality of life is all about living in safe, secure, attractive neighborhoods where we know our neighbors.
Is this an issue of police enforcement, or are you talking more about what citizens do?
This is what citizens do, but they do it in combination with the police.
Do you feel the police do an adequate job in District 6?
Oh, I think the police do an awesome job throughout our entire city, and I'm a very strong promoter of the Bremerton Police Department. They're just a terrific professional force, very friendly, and I think they really are there to protect and serve. And one of the things I love about them the most is their very prompt response to 911 calls. But getting back to your question, the whole gist of a neighborhood watch organization is for the neighbors to be proactive, to be the eyes and ears, not only for the police, but also for each other. We look out for each other, and that makes all the difference. It's interesting to me that when the city established recently the new BCAPS program, the Bremerton Civilian Auxiliary Patrol for the police department, that they referred to it as neighborhood watch on steroids. I love that. And I believe it's a mobile neighborhood watch. So, very important part.
Some of what you mentioned, and you kind of mentioned this in your opening statement, is I think the reason you're bringing this up is because you have done this
yes.
with the radio districts, and you did this as a citizen. To you, what's different about, I mean, you could just continue this as a citizen. Why do you want to do it as a council person? How do you do it differently as a council person? What more do you think happens in that if you're there?
Great question. And I plan to continue doing this as a citizen, even if I'm not elected to the city council. I believe it's that important. And that's just what I told Joe Sexton when I got off the phone with him. It doesn't matter. We're going to continue. So why would it be an important part of my platform for city council? Because it would help us to promote the awareness and the value of it within the district and also in other parts of the city. This isn't just about District 6, it's about our entire city, and we want to strengthen it.
We're gonna flop those issues now, so I'm gonna let you answer kind of, Roy's talking about economic development and bringing jobs, and you had a statement earlier about that, and about helping families and things. Sure. What's your experience with economic development issues? What do you think the city or the council could be doing better to kind of open more opportunities there?
Okay. Well, economic development is the second part of my platform, an extremely important part. In terms of my background, I have 26 years of executive experience actually creating jobs. And I know that the way we organized our companies, that they were all living wage jobs, because we took care to pay the people at the bottom in proportion to the people at the top, and to give them benefits that would enable them to live what I consider to be the traditional American dream, to have a job, to be able to make an income that's sufficient to pay your living expenses and support your family and provide for your goals, provide for your retirement. I'm very proud of what we've done in that respect. But you know, it's one thing to say that you're in favor of economic development and living wage jobs, and it's another thing to actually have some steps to get you there. That's what I have. I propose that we take proactive steps. Number one, to fill the empty commercial and retail spaces on both Wheaton Way and Kitsap Way. That's a blight on our city. It's a shame that our citizens have to drive past those empty boxes to go to Silverdale to get the things that they need, or go to other parts of the county to get what they need. And what's happening in addition is that the city is losing both sales tax revenue and real estate tax revenue. So it's a double whammy with respect to that. The second part of my economic development plan is to, once we have developed some knowledge and expertise in filling those retail spaces, I believe that we should move on to some of the neighborhood centers like those in Minette and also Callow Avenue. I think Callow Avenue could be a magnificent entry to our city from the Burwell side. Much better than it is now, and I think it really needs a thorough redevelopment. And then I also believe that we ought to be very supportive of the Port of Bremerton. We need to be collaborative with the Port of Bremerton as they seek to fill those industrial spaces. And the incumbent mentioned his newfound concerns about KETA and whether that's really fulfilling its mission. And I really question that as well. I have had a recent conversation with a representative of the Port of Bremerton who is initiating a new marketing arm for the port so that they can strengthen their ability to fill those spaces. I think that's a move in the right direction, and frankly, if I had a say about that $15,000 that we were sending to KETA, I'd just as soon send it to the Port of Bremerton.
Right, on the question of improving the neighborhood, quality of life kind of things, neighborhood watches, how do you feel about the status of things right now, and what's your, where's your head at as far as making that a priority?
Sure. I think it's a very important part of the security and safety of our neighborhoods. We can't force citizens to be involved in that. I have been involved in that. I used to attend the neighborhood block watch captains meetings. One question I asked Mr. Sexton was, can you provide us with a map? Show us where we have gaps in our neighborhood block watch captain coverage. I never got that, but you know, there are some challenges. And you know, just because there is not a formal block watch established doesn't mean that neighbors don't talk to one another and contact the police when it's necessary. You can have informal networks. So, you know, everybody's looking for the bureaucracy and looking to fill the box and saying, oh, there's a neighborhood block watch formally established here. It doesn't mean that people don't watch for their neighbors. So I think there's an assumption being made that because there's no formal organization established or we don't have a sign up that, and I get reports all the time. I see things on Facebook. My neighbors tell me about things, you know, I observe things. So things are happening out there, people are concerned. One of the issues that has been raised, is raised every year, is the fireworks issue. It actually came to the forum last night where there are citizens in our district, in District 6 and throughout the city, who are concerned about fireworks and how we address that and what we need to do. So that's kind of the emergent issue. I'm also in the process of gathering data. I'm concerned that CENTCOM has not performed the way I expect them to perform. I got anecdotal information that CENTCOM dropped calls, that they ran out of phone lines for people calling in to 911 on the 4th of July. And so again, to ensure that we get what we pay for, which we pay $500,000 a year, the city of Bremerton actually contributes towards the cost of CENTCOM. I want to make sure we get our money's worth. And if there are operational and staffing issues in CENTCOM, I want to know about that so we can make adjustments. So there's a range of issues. It's a silver buckshot approach. There isn't one key to ensuring safety and security in our neighborhoods. You know, community involvement and police involvement are really important, but we have other issues where just communicating between the citizens and 911, the emergency service providers, has become a challenge.
Yeah, I heard the fireworks came up last night, so I don't know what the whole debate was, but as a one-word answer, would you be willing on an ordinance to ban fireworks in the city? Do you think that's a good idea or not? Yes or no?
No.
No.
Well, one-word answer. Actually, I answered it last night, and at this point, no.
At this point, okay. Actually, I'm going to ask another question, and this is something that our board has been really interested in. We actually had Chief Strand come in and talk about it, and that's the homeless population in Bremerton and the steps that have been taken by the police department. We had a really good meeting with Chief Strand about that, and he kind of explained some of the policy things that have been done at the city council level, and then also some of the steps that he is instructing officers to take to alleviate some of the neighborhood concerns, but also treat people with respect and not causing, you know, more trouble than is needed. So let me ask you, you know, you have Kitsap Way in your district, which we know there was panhandling on that road. That was something that was very visible. How how do you feel about that issue in general right now? Do you think there is something that still needs to be handled as far as homeless population and what issues that's causing? And then is there anything that you'd like to see the city do in general about that issue as we keep talking?
Right, yeah, it's a huge challenge for the city of Bremerton and the county. We do have quite a few homeless people. We have a large population of low-income folks. We have a lot of social services based in Bremerton. I don't know, it's kind of a chicken and egg question. I mean, are the social services here because the homeless population and the population of low-income folks is here, or do they come here because we have social services? We've seen a real increase in call for service, and it's expensive. We've also seen, the crime stats are kind of going down. We get a report every month from the chief of police about certain categories of crime, and we seem to be moving in a positive direction. That is a lower rate of crime, especially serious crime. So I don't necessarily equate homelessness in Bremerton with the crime rate necessarily. We also have a large problem with drug and alcohol abuse, and you might know that the county commissioners implemented a 0.1% sales tax increase for mental health and substance abuse treatment. And so the city of Bremerton has been involved in that. The city police department has actually applied for and got a grant for mental health training for its police officers, and also to provide that training for officers throughout the county, all the jurisdictions. We had a problem with mental health folks who were picked up by the police. They were transported to Harrison Hospital, and they had to maintain a police officer there. I mean, that takes one police officer out of a shift of 4 or 5 police officers. Major impact on our ability to provide service to the rest of the city. So that's going to be rectified. There are going to be some beds dedicated to folks who are suffering mental health problems. So homelessness here has been a big impact. It's impacting our ability to provide services. But it begs the question, we're really avoiding the issue. I mean, what is the nature of our economy here? I mean, folks who are homeless for different reasons. Some of them are veterans, some of them have lost their jobs and lost everything, some of them have mental health issues. But for the folks who, through no fault of their own, have lost their jobs, what are we doing to provide opportunities for them to get back on their feet? To actually get the education they need, to actually get meaningful, gainful employment, so they can get into quality housing, so they can be productive members of society. And that's a huge challenge for us. And I've been working 6 years the whole time to try to address that. And over the next 4 years, I'll continue to do that. And that's a big part of our challenge. And that's all connected to economic development.
Well, I would echo practically everything that Councilman Runyon said with respect to that statement. Certainly, we live in an environment where the economy is somewhat beyond the control of the Bremerton City Council. And we are in a situation where we have haves and have-nots, winners and losers, and we have people who are homeless. And I'm so proud of our city that we have a humanitarian approach to that, and we have compassion for that, and that we have so many wonderful nonprofit organizations that address that. I'm also very proud that the Bremerton Police Department, in its handling of the situation, has taken a compassionate approach to it as well. With respect to the specific question about panhandling and the way that's being handled, I think that Chief Strand's approach was brilliant. And if I had been on the City Council when that debate was taking place, I would have voted enthusiastically in favor of it. In fact, I would vote enthusiastically in favor of taking panhandling not only off the main roads and intersections, but also off the secondary streets and intersections in the city. I view panhandling as a business. I do not think that most of the people who are down and out and needy are out there panhandling. I think that the panhandlers are organized and that they are business people, just as they are business people on the Seattle side of the water as well. So I don't favor that kind of business going on in our city. I think it puts a damper on a lot of things. I know it puts a damper on economic development with respect to the development of the retail piece of it. What I mean by that is panhandlers that come around retail establishments basically put a damper on the business. People don't like that. And one of the discussions that I've had with a potential target for annexation just outside the city said, gee, I wouldn't mind having our store annexed, but I would expect the city to take some action in response to that. I would expect proactive action with respect to the homeless, with respect to panhandlers, with respect to police protection and fire protection. So it's a very important issue. I think also that the chief's approach to helping those find resources, panhandlers that they have confronted, help those people find resources so that if they genuinely need housing, food, shelter, these types of services, they know where to get them. That's the way to go.
You both have brought up economic development a couple times. One of those issues or one of the points in that kind of debate that always comes up over the last couple of years has been the B&O tax. The city is on a path to, they have changed what the levels are and what businesses have to pay that, and there is something that's phasing it lower over the coming number of years. I want your opinion on, are you comfortable with that timeline, how it's been set out right now? Should it be accelerated? And if it's going to be accelerated to phase out the B&O tax earlier, is there some other revenue source that kind of fills in that gap what the city's going to need? What's your opinion?
I think that people point to the B&O tax as being the problem, the big barrier to having businesses come into Bremerton, the reason why we have those empty storefronts on Kitsap Way and Wheaton Way and other parts of the city. And I say no. It is a component of the problem, but it is not the problem in and of itself. Yes, the B&O tax is regressive, and yes, not every municipality has it, so it puts us at somewhat of a competitive disadvantage. But also, yes, we have a fairly large exemption for smaller businesses on the B&O tax. So for a lot of those companies, it's really not an issue other than the small filing fee and the paperwork. I really think the more important question is for us to take a proactive approach to business development in the city. And what do I mean by that? I mean, we need to conduct an inventory of our vacant spaces to find out where they are, what they used to be, what the square footages are, et cetera, to see what the potential would be for those spaces. But we need to see, and we need to see what the problems are associated with those spaces. Is it individual to the space? Is it a matter of the owner being an obstacle? Is it a matter of the price being an obstacle? What's the obstacle? We need to contact the brokers who are trying to fill those empty spaces and ask them, what are the problems that you're encountering trying to fill those spaces? What are your clients telling you about the obstacles of dealing with the city of Bremerton? And we also need to ask our own DCD for a self-analysis of what they consider to be the problems and the hang-ups that are being encountered by potential business interests coming into the city of Bremerton. That's being proactive. That's finding out exactly what are the problems and dealing with them. And then from there, coming up with a plan to change the Bremerton Municipal Code, our policies, what have you, to make a much more business-friendly climate. After that, what do? We take a look at the demographics, and we see that if we draw 5-mile circles around Bremerton and Silverdale, there's a sharp contrast. How many of you know what the population is within a 5-mile circle of Silverdale? 75,000 people. How many people are within a 5-mile circle of downtown Bremerton? 109,000 people. What is the difference in the average income between those two areas? Practically nothing. So how is it that we have Silverdale on the one hand with 75,000 people and Bremerton on the other hand with 109,000 people, and Silverdale has all the retail? Well, there are reasons for that, and some of it is historical inertia, what happened 30 years ago with the mall. But some of it are things that we're doing right now that we need to change. We need to be proactive about that. And then once we get that together, we need to help the brokers that are trying to fill these spaces by going out to target companies that we can identify, contacting them and turning them from cold leads to warm leads. Anybody that's ever been involved with sales knows that you'd rather deal with warm leads than cold leads. The city has it within its capacity to do that. I would ask Councilman Runyon, when did you ask the DCD for their analysis of what the hang-ups are of getting those retail spaces filled?
So business and occupation tax constitutes $2.7 million of our general fund revenue. So it's a pretty big chunk of change. Primarily, the biggest piece being property tax, then sales tax revenue, then B&O, and then fees for service and that type of thing. So the current exemption amount is $100,000 a year. So if you're running a business in Bremerton, your first $100,000 of gross sales is not subject to B&O tax. I've actually attempted to get the administration and the council to actually exempt businesses that are not going to achieve that exemption amount from having to even file a B&O tax return. You know, there was a mention of the paperwork. Well, when you're a very small business, every piece of paper you have to fill out for the government is more time and work you take away from your primary business. A corporation has the depth and personnel and knowledge to achieve that. That's not that big of a problem. So we can actually help our small businesses and help our economic development by eliminating, where possible, regulation and paperwork. That's just not necessary. So the B&O is important. We are looking at possibility of annexing other areas, including commercial areas, that could generate enough sales tax revenue to maybe cover the $2.7 million that we currently generate from B&O within the existing city limits. We are doing a lot of things currently, and I've been pushing the administration, pushing DCD. I'm concerned about this idea of self-analysis. It's hard to be objective when it's a self-analysis or self-grading. I've actually asked that DCD go through a lean process, and lean has to do with assigning a value to every step in the process that DCD puts an applicant through to determine that that piece of the process adds value. At the end of the day, I believe the point of DCD is to, as far as economic development, is to certainly not establish barriers towards economic development, but actually facilitate businesses and developers coming into Bremerton. Because you've got the county, Silverdale was cited as an example, where folks, businesses, and developers can go. They don't have to come into the city of Bremerton. They're not beating down our doors, folks. But we have this bureaucracy, we have processes that unfortunately I don't believe are applied equally to all applicants. I think that's a question, that's a problem.
What do you mean by that?
Well, and I cited last night in the forum, there's a perception amongst some developers and business people that they're not treated the same as others. There's a perception that we have what used to be called an old boys network, where it was necessary to know the elected officials, to be in bed, quote unquote, with the politicians to get things done. And that is an environment and atmosphere, even a perception that we need to combat. You know, we need to tell developers and business people, we're open for business. You have a proposal, we have a process, we have law, we have a way to get your project in without having to get the support of a politician. I mean,
do you think it's just a perception? I guess you keep using that word. Do you see evidence of that, or because I completely agree with you, the perception, and this happens all over the place. I don't get what I want, so. Do you think it's more than that, or is it just something that the city needs?
I think there is more than that, and I'm not really at liberty to speak right now, but I'm going to move this. We need to have a formal investigation through the audit function on the performance of DCD and the other departments to ensure that we are being fair and we are being objective. You know, there's a principle our whole country is founded on. It's called equal protection before the law. And if we're not treating applicants fairly and equally, we are at risk of running afoul of that principle, in addition to lawsuits potentially. So it shouldn't be who you know. It should be what you know and what you tell the city and willingness to play by the rules. But the city government has to play by the rules. I mean, how can we impose law if we ourselves, if this administration is not willing to follow the law and play by the rules? And that's fundamental.
You were in favor of keeping the city auditor? Very nice job.
Well, that's an interesting question. Thank you, Dave, for asking that, because I'm actually on the audit committee, just full disclosure. I believe the audit committee was established, and this is in our charter, this is in our constitution, which was ratified by the citizens. It wasn't ratified by the mayor or the city council or the auditor, but it was the citizens who felt it was important to have a further check and balance and to assist the council to ensure things were being done per council policy and code. So yes, what happened was, for the 2015 budget, the proposal made by the mayor essentially decapitated the audit function by reducing the budget from $178,000 down to $42,000 without consulting the audit committee. Unlike consulting the department heads, the mayor goes to department heads as part of the budget process. What do you need to do your function? Give me those numbers. What do you need? What are your expenses going to be? We know what revenues you're going to need. That's put into a document called the proposed budget. That's presented to the city council, and the city council vets that and goes through that. So it was a surprise to members of the audit committee, 3 council members on the audit committee, and the citizen members, and the auditor himself, that the proposed budget included an elimination of essentially $130,000 of that budget. Shocking. I mean, that's not an example of open, accountable, and effective government. That's not a professional way to operate a government or a business. So, yes, I'm in favor of the audit committee. It does very important work, and I can tell you, maybe I'm biased. Maybe I did a self-analysis of performance of the audit committee. Oh, that wouldn't be objective. But I think this audit committee this year has been the most effective audit committee we've had for many years. The topics that we're addressing go to strategic issues as well as policy and as well as the willingness and ability of our own government to follow the law. If the government is not going to follow the law, how can we expect our citizens and businesses to follow the law? Government needs to set the example, and actually the charter specifies that the government needs to follow its own laws, and we don't do that all the time.
So we have a project there that you could suggest as far as the DCD goes.
I've suggested it.
All right.
I've not received a warm reception. Why is that?
I want to take.
I'd like to
actually,
follow
I do
up.
actually want to. Oh, go ahead. Then I'm going to ask you a question along a similar line.
Okay, great. I'd like to
Maybe
follow
we're
up
thinking
on
the
some
same
of the
thing.
things that have been said here, because, you know, some people just find a conspiracy behind every bush, and I don't see that myself. I don't really agree with this paradigm that we have an old boys network in this city, and that the old boys network are the ones that are keeping the newcomers out. I also don't believe that we have a conspiracy within the DCD to keep people who are not connected out. I think what we have here is some ideals that have been codified into the Bremerton Municipal Code that frankly just didn't work out. I'll give you an example. Back in 2007, the city adopted design specifications for the commercial areas. This was based on what was called the Wheaton Way Sub-Area Plan. They were very specific design specifications, and without getting into the detail of that, I'll just suffice it to say that they were expensive to implement. And the businessmen who considered developing the retail on the Wheaton Way corridor just said, no, we're just not going to do that. Well, those were implemented at a time, 2007, when we were still in the boom. And then when the bottom fell out of the market in 2008 and 2009, and all the money dried up, we didn't do anything to change that until 2014. That's a long time. Mr. Runyon was on the council that whole time, did nothing to motivate changes in that code. And that was actually hurting us. There was no conspiracy. It was just a failed policy. Then 2014 rolls around, and finally we changed it. But did we change it all the way? No. If you had a developer that wanted to come in and redevelop the Kmart building, which has been empty now since what? 2009? Right? Long time. If they wanted to redevelop that Kmart building, the only way that they could do it in its current location, which is where most developers would want to rebuild it, is if they're using the exact same footprint and the exact same foundation. Otherwise, they have to go back to those failed 2007 to 2014 standards and build the building closer to the sidewalk on Wheaton Way. It's crazy. You know, when you're dealing with a city like Bremerton, a developer is going to weigh the cost of the development. They're going to weigh, going to Silverdale, for example, and developing raw land, the cost of that is different than going into a city and either demolishing a building and then rebuilding, or retrofitting an existing building. The economics of that are different. And if on top of the economics of that, we're making it difficult for the developer to actually achieve the design that they want to achieve that's going to be best for their business, they are going to stay away. That's exactly what's happened here. Nothing more than that.
Do you have any questions you want to ask?
Yeah, I'd like to ask a question. So if you, for both of you guys, if you get on the council, how are we going to see a different Bremerton in a perfect world? Obviously, you know, you've got to put forth proposals, and sometimes they get turned away and sometimes they succeed. But in a perfect world, how do you see Bremerton 5 years from now based on your influence?
Well, in a perfect world, based on my influence, our economy would be more robust. It'd be diversified. We'd have more living wage jobs. We'd have improved quality of housing stock. We'd be able to provide all the government services that people expect. So we'd be on an upward trajectory. But there's so much we don't have control over. Market conditions, you know, we're a close neighbor of Seattle and Bellevue, which are both going through a huge boom right now, especially in real estate. We have a barrier as far as the time it takes to go from Bremerton to Silverdale for folks who are employed in Seattle. One of the other things that I would do, and my actions have supported this, and my votes have supported this, we actually need to think about a different relationship with the county. The county has been selective about its adhering to the Growth Management Act. And there was mention of Silverdale brought up as a retail center in Kitsap County. How did that happen? Silverdale is not a city, folks. It's not an incorporated city. In 2003, the county commissioners lobbied the state to make Silverdale an urban center, which allowed Silverdale, the county, to compete for grant money, to develop the infrastructure, to allow for further development of the commercial areas in Silverdale. In direct competition with Bremerton. In direct competition with Bremerton. That has hurt us. The purpose of the Growth Management Act is to direct new development into urban areas so that you would have a more efficient provision of services, police, fire, and other services that folks expect. And so one of the things that I have taken on, and it's been confrontational and not pleasant, but sometimes when you're an elected official, you need to do the right thing and stand by principle. Taken on the county, called them on their inability or unwillingness to actually abide by the law, the Growth Management Act. The county has been using the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council as their mechanism, their instrument for suppressing the ability of Bremerton to develop as it should. A long list of things that we can do. We have looked at zoning and development regulations, which is a challenge. And I've always questioned whether or not they were realistic. You know, what happens is you get a planning commission that is populated by folks who believe in a certain vision of what things should look like. We have a thing called the Design Review Board. So in the downtown sub area, any developer who wants to bring a project has to bring drawings, plans to the Design Review Board as one of the first steps in the permitting process. That board has an aesthetic, it's about aesthetics partly, and so they decide whether or not that type of project fits in. You know, are the roof overhangs too large? You know, is the color going to be, you know, unusual? This type of thing. So that's the first part of the vetting process. And I have questioned the Design Review Board standards because some of the things that are practical, like parking requirements, don't seem to be addressed. I'll give you a perfect example. Spyglass, so the project which is going up on Highland, right here in the downtown, came to Design Review. I was at the committee meeting, and I didn't see the challenger there, so I assume that he's ignorant on this issue, of course. But 88 units, 1 parking spot per unit. Now, the nature of Highland is it's a very narrow street, it's a one-way street, pretty densely populated, and there is insufficient parking, on-street parking, for all of the people living there now. And I actually raised a question as a council member, and as a person representing that area. What about additional parking? Where are you going to put the moving vans? Where are you going to put the service vehicles that show up? Are they going to park on the street? Are they going to have to block the street? Fortunately, the developer heard that, I think was sensitive to that criticism, and actually was able to buy additional lots to actually expand their footprint slightly, to provide for some additional parking, to address some of that. So I think it's a responsibility of a council member who actually has very good knowledge of the situation on the ground to suggest those types of changes. Even if you have a citizen commission or a design review board, which may not always be founded in reality. You know, they have this ideal. So it's balancing what we want to see with the practical application of that. We've got to stay grounded, and in 5 years, I hope to see more development, more living wage jobs. I hope to see diversification. I'm going to see improvements in our infrastructure, especially our street grid. We're now starting to work on sidewalks. I'm going to see an improvement in our housing stock. But all of those things are related, you know. But the key is going to be economic development. So I expect to see the city open to development by whoever shows up. And I hope to see a reduction in interference by the political players.
One of the primary reasons that I want to be on the Bremerton City Council is because I want to accelerate the revitalization of our city. Looking down the road, I don't know how long it will take, but I would hope that within the next 4 to 5 years that we would see stronger, safer, more attractive neighborhoods, that we would see the retail spaces on Wheaton and Kitsap Ways filled, that we would see Callow Avenue on the way to redevelopment, that we would see increases in the city's revenue and revenue base. I would hope that we would begin to see an industrial park that is a lot fuller than it is today. I would look toward improving downtown parking. I would look toward improvements in Kitsap Transit's transit system for in-city. I would look for more shipyard workers to actually be living in Bremerton again, and that when they rediscover all the good things that's going on here and the convenience of living in the city, and if we support them with in-town bus service to get to the shipyard, it would actually help us with things like traffic congestion and parking in the downtown area. There's certain things that I would keep the same. We have great fire and police departments. We have a great parks department, and I see a continuation of those services. I see us continuing to improve our infrastructure. I see our Public Works and Utilities Department improving the water and sewer systems, and I see them improving their ability to top the roads and deal with the sidewalks. And by the way, with respect to sidewalks, I think we need to make a change in the way we see the ordinance for the responsibility of the sidewalk. I think that the maintenance and cleaning of the sidewalk ought to be the homeowner's responsibility. I think that if a homeowner takes a perfectly good sidewalk and ruins it by putting in a driveway or making some other kind of change, then of course they should be responsible for fixing it. Or if they plant a tree that upheaves it, I think they ought to be responsible for fixing it. But otherwise, I think that the development of sidewalks is the city's responsibility, just as it is for the roads, the streets. We ought to look at it the same way. We ought not to have a city council that is trying to put the economic onus for developing and maintaining sidewalks on the homeowners. The other things that I see and hope to see in the next 5 years is a redeveloped Anderson Cove. What do I mean by that? Am I talking about we're going to go in there and clear the whole thing and redevelop the whole thing? Well, not necessarily, but when it comes to timber, for example, you can either take the approach of a clear-cut approach or selective logging. And I prefer a selective logging to the redevelopment of Anderson Cove. And I'd also like to see us well along the way to having annexed and redeveloped Navy Yard City. All of those are things that are within our grasp. Last but not least, I don't think that a city with a population ring of 109,000 people should be without a hospital. We need medical services here in Bremerton, and I plan to provide leadership to secure medical services, to replace Harrison Medical Center. All those things. We can accelerate the revitalization of our great city, but we can't do it with the same old ideas and the same old characters. We need new ideas and fresh blood.
All right, we're getting close to the end, but right now.
You kind of touched on something that I definitely wanted to talk about. Transportation. And with Kitsap Transit and looking at, because I'm very active, into their whole thing. But like you say, with low-income families here, and especially in the 6th district, what did you guys plan, and both of you may see, you've already been there, you going in, that needs to happen with Kitsap Transit? Because so the way that I've seen it, we've discussed this on the board, is the accountability part with them, that there's really no hardcore accountability. Even some of the council people have said that as well. What do you guys see with transportation? Because as businesses come in and stuff like that, people have to get to these businesses.
I want to see better in-town service by Kitsap Transit. I think Kitsap Transit is torn between three things right now. It's torn between service to the city, service to the county, and providing a fast ferry to Seattle. Frankly, I think we ought to set aside the fast ferry and let that be King County's responsibility.
King County, is that what you just said?
King County, absolutely. I think it should be their responsibility. I think they should incorporate it as part of their water taxi service. They have a great established service that works very well. It's really as much in their interest to have a fast ferry to and from Bremerton as it is in ours.
I'm sorry, you're saying that you think King County should pay for the fast ferry between Bremerton and Seattle?
I think that we should use that service. They should expand that service to Bremerton. Yes, I think we should negotiate a deal with them. I don't know that they're going to do it on their own.
Oh,
I think that we need to reach out to them and make that happen. But let me set aside the fast ferry for a moment. The other aspect is this tension, if you will, between the city service and the county service. And I really think that what's happening here with Kitsap Transit is that they're sacrificing their service to the city to provide service to the county. And that is a problem that I think needs to be addressed. And if I were on the city council, I would hope to be a part of the discussion with Kitsap Transit.
I have a question.
Would you like me to answer? Is it, okay. Well, just a disclaimer, I'm actually an employee of Kitsap Transit, but that's not going to censor I'm not going to censor my remarks. From a policy standpoint, we have a representative from the City Council who serves on the Board of Directors of Kitsap Transit, and all the jurisdictions have representatives. They're all elected officials. Theoretically, that should be the mechanism for the creation of policy, and certainly service and how service is delivered should be in the purview of the Board of Directors of Kitsap Transit. But there have been some challenges. There's a limited budget. We haven't seen sales tax revenue, which is the prime source of operating funds for Kitsap Transit, grow fast enough to cover all the demands. The issue has been raised about providing low-income folks with transport. Kitsap Transit only operates 6 days a week now. There was a time when they operated 7 days a week. And so it's caused hardship for folks, especially on Sundays, trying to get to church and other affairs. So, and the time of operation has also been restricted. There is a service development function within Kitsap Transit where there's supposed to look at the demand for service and then adjust the routes accordingly to provide those resources. I don't know that I don't have enough detail to give you a full explanation as to what's going on, but there has been criticism of how that's been done. One of the mayors of one of our sister jurisdictions has actually gotten more service, better service in her city, in kind of a, I guess there's gonna be at least one route created that will be a rotator within the city. But, you know, the city of Bremerton actually has a very high level of service. We actually have a number of established routes, crosstown routes and also commuter routes at the end of the day that serve Bremerton very well. One of the challenges always having a bus where everybody wants it when you want it. It's just not possible to do. So, very important question. It also has to do with growth management. You know, one of the reasons, again, behind growth management was to ensure that you have the resources to provide those urban level services. And many people consider mass transit to be an urban level service that people have come to rely on and expect. But when you spread out, when you establish an urban, a commercial center outside the established cities, that puts a huge burden on the ability of government to provide those services. And Silverdale causes a huge burden. There's actually been a diversion of resources to serve that commercial area. So it's ironic that decisions taken, you know, 12 years ago are now causing this strain on services that, you know, the government's providing and agencies are providing. So
Could you
that's
just
very
comment
good.
quickly
Yes,
on the,
sure.
on the fast ferry?
Oh, fast ferry,
What do you
yeah,
think about
sure.
having King County, what do you think about?
That would be so wonderful, the citizens and taxpayers of King County to subsidize us. I mean, I
Yeah.
guess in the real world, that happens all the time. No, it doesn't happen all the time. The issue of the fast ferry has been something that I've been involved in for a long time. When the state ferry system was running the two high-speed ferries, the Chinook and I think it was the Snohomish, through Rich Passage, there was a lawsuit filed by people owning property along Rich
Right.
Passage, right? And I actually weighed in, and I was in favor of maintaining the service. Unfortunately, the state ferry system, a government bureaucracy had not done its homework, had not developed a vessel to account for the narrow passage and the energy of the wake that would be created by this vessel. But I advocated in favor of maintaining the service, hopefully at full speed, and that argument lost. The vessel we have currently that was built by Kitsap Transit using federal funds is called the Rich Passage 1, O-N-E. First thing I would do is rename that vessel into the Rich Passage Property Owners 1, W-O-N, because that's more accurate. But I used to work in Seattle and used to commute on the ferries all the time, and I certainly empathize with folks who live here on this side and go to work in Seattle. The time it takes to conduct that transit, that commute, that's a quality of life issue. It really challenges folks to have a decent quality home life here in Kitsap County and Bremerton. I'm in favor of looking at high-speed ferry options. I'm also in favor of Kitsap Transit providing accurate information as to the costs and the potential benefits of that. I'm troubled that we seem not to have gotten those numbers. I attended the open house that was conducted for elected officials back a year ago at the conference center. There was a PowerPoint presentation, and they had their consultant talk about the cost-benefit analysis. And then there was a written piece of paper that was handed out. The numbers didn't even jive between that piece of paper and what these folks were talking about in the PowerPoint presentation. I actually sent a question in, what are the real numbers? What can we expect to tell our citizens? I've never gotten a response. I mean, they're still working on a business plan. They're still formulating all that. So, bottom line is, I'm open to the idea, but I want accurate numbers, as accurate as they can get, and not numbers that are massaged to achieve the result they're looking for, which will probably be a vote in favor of a sales tax increase. If that's the way the citizens of Kitsap County want to vote, so be it. But the estimated cost, I've done some back-of-the-napkin calculations based on the program that Kitsap Transit wants to implement, 3 ferries. Over 10 years, you're talking $100 million of taxpayer investment. Much of that local, based on a sales tax increase of anywhere from 0.2 to 0.3%, and that number seems to bob all over the place. So I'm open to the idea, but it's got to make sense financially. The responsibility of a council member and the responsibility of someone on the board of directors of Kitsap Transit is to understand those numbers, ask those difficult questions, even if it's uncomfortable for the bureaucracy. And I've done that. I have consistently done that and tried to hold bureaucracies accountable for getting us the right information. And so I'm the person to do that. And it's not about being a team player, it's actually about doing the right thing and standing up for principle and standing up for our citizens and getting information to make an informed decision.
Right, Sue had one more question and then we'll.
Sorry.
Yeah,
No, she do.
yeah, I'm completely switching gears here on you. I'm on a couple of working boards, and we really only progress and accomplish things for the most part if we work as a team and reach consensus. And so I'd like to hear from both of you, how do you build consensus in accomplishing the work of a 7-member city council?
I'll be happy to take that first. Some people believe in winning through confrontation. Others believe in winning through intimidation. I believe in winning through collaboration. I will do my homework and be fully prepared for meetings. I won't be looking for trouble when I'm at the meeting. I won't be trying to prove that I'm the smartest man in the room. I won't be attempting to micromanage all the details. I won't be attempting to second guess others, and I won't try to do their jobs. What I will do as a member of the council is I will be listening. And this is something that from my sales experience is going to prove very valuable. It proves valuable to me every day. Listening to learn and listening to understand others. Also, presenting new ideas, researching new ideas, bringing new concepts to the city council, asking for more information about what we're doing right now, what is working and what isn't working, what could work better. Supporting the good idea of others. You know, on a city council, you can't always be the leader. Sometimes you have to be a follower. You have to support the ideas of others. That's very important to the building of agreements, to the building of consensus, and to finding solutions that everybody can agree on. And that's what I do. I work with people to find solutions that are going to work, that we can all agree on. I will be professional, friendly, and agreeable. I will not be confrontational. Working together, I believe we can move everything forward.
Teamwork is an interesting concept. You know, the professional baseball, you've got a lot of teams, and some of those teams don't work very well. They're all teams. Some of them are in the cellar. Some of them just can't get off first base, so to speak. So teamwork in and of itself is not the end goal of government in our system. The purpose of government in our system, the American system, is to get the best result possible based on all of the interests that are out there, using the limited resources available. It's a huge challenge. It might be different being on a board of directors of a nonprofit and that type of thing, because there is a very limited, more of a limited focus. The issues facing our city and many other cities and other jurisdictions are extremely complex and very costly. And to get the best result and have the ideas vetted, proposals vetted, requires disagreement sometimes. I believe strongly in appealing to reason and data, and not the emotion, and not the suggestion or the hint, or the guess, which unfortunately seems to be one of the dominant ways we make decisions in our city. Now, there has been a shift, I think, and it varies. Sometimes, you know, data and reason and critical thinking rule the day, and sometimes not. Sometimes it's a total swag. Kind of a scary way to make decisions for 40,000 people, you know, $108 million budget, and we're the regional center of Kitsap County. So teamwork is a double-edged sword. I've just estimated, I probably vote with the rest of the council 95% of the times. That 5% of the times where I have to take another position because the data, because the code, The city charter, the constitution do not support the position that the rest of the council adopts. That's about doing the right thing, folks, even if it's not politically popular. You know, if it was all about teamwork, let's just let the city council president and the mayor select who's going to be on the city council. If that's what we want to do. If that teamwork's the most important thing. I believe having a group of people who represent as many interests in the city as possible is the best way to do it. That's where we get the best result. That's where we don't get yes men, we don't get rubber stamps. We vet these ideas, we vet these policies, we vet these budgets. And we keep faith with our citizens who voted for that charter and said, we want to have an audit function. Or we want to make sure that there's a process for replacing the mayor when he or she resigns. And not the city council deciding with a wink and a nod that, oh, we're just going to put that person in as mayor, irregardless of the charter, which has happened, folks. I'm the person who stood up to the council. I stood up to the council president, I got them to vote, they're on record as violating the charter. Anybody who in public office who takes an oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States, the state of Washington, and the laws, needs to live up to that oath. Despite what the rest of the team says, we need to do the right thing. And as a council member, today, tomorrow, and if I'm reelected, I will continue to do that. That will be my primary objective, my primary directive. That's important. Principle, defending the liberties of our citizens, defending the process and law, equality before the law, equal protection. You know, nobody seems to want to talk about that. I'm not sure why. It's scary. It's dangerous. You might be unpopular. You might be disliked by the rest of your council members. It's not about liking people. It's not about being popular. It's about doing the right thing.
Good question, Sid. Good for, actually, we're gonna wrap it up. We're a little over time, we promised, but that was good.
Great.
Honestly, there's a few more questions I'm sure we have. We've got to stop at some point. Thank you guys for coming in.